The irony of being emotionally unavailable is that you get so shut down to yourself, you don't even know that you're emotionally unavailable. I experienced dramatic healing around this aspect of the wounds that I was carrying from past trauma. And when I began healing, I thought that any change in my emotional state or sense of safety was going to come from the environment or other people. Now, you might think this too. Most people do, because it seems intuitively obvious that if you're defensive or guarded against getting close to other people, it's because of them. And that was true in the beginning when the people close to you maybe neglected you or even abused you. But now, if you're emotionally unavailable, the change is going to have to come from you. It's one of those things that you kind of have to experience to understand. Just like if you'd never seen the color green, I couldn't explain it to you. I couldn't experience the sweetness of being emotionally available until it started to take shape in my, my heart, my being. And when I found out what had been blocking me all along, I was just totally surprised. So I want to tell you some of the unexpected things that turned out to be blocking me, and then some of the surprising things that helped me to become emotionally available. So first, let's define emotional availability. I'm talking about your capacity and willingness to engage in meaningful emotional connections with other people. And it means being open and present and responsive to your own emotions and, the emotions of other people. Like, ooh, I like this, or yikes, something tells me this person isn't telling the truth. This level of awareness is something that can be totally lost on those of us with unhealed trauma from the past. But when you can become emotionally available, real awareness of yourself and other people and what's going on around you opens up to you. So trust becomes possible. And distrust actually means something. When you can read the room accurately, then expressing yourself becomes a powerful way of connecting. This is how intimacy becomes possible. Your feelings are telling you good information, so you can tell the difference between the feeling that you're in danger and you should run, and then a feeling that's just a feeling, a memory, a reaction. Even though you feel triggered or off, you know everything's okay. That's the kind of discernment that begins to take shape in you when you become emotionally available, because it means you can feel everything that's there in your perception. So here are some of the surprising things that were blocking me. One of them is the idea that if you're feeling bad, you need to talk about it. You need to talk to someone. Everybody says that. They sort of mean therapy, but also friends, and you should talk when you feel upset. So the weird thing about me, and now I know this is true for a lot of people who had childhood trauma, me talking about what's upsetting me can actually get me kind of wound up. I enter a state of neurological dysregulation when I do too much of that. And so the advice that if I already felt bad, I needed to talk to people, it assumed that that was going to feel good, but it also assumed that the other person wanted to hear all about it. And in my life, it's been not every situation is one where every bad feeling I have, I need to be talking about and putting out on the table for other people to comment on or fix or criticize. All right, another thing that was totally blocking me is the idea that you should trust your gut. Here's the thing about traumatized people. Like, trusting your gut is absolutely like what we want, but you don't know what your gut is yet. When your trauma's been really active and you don't have much healing yet, it's really hard to tell the difference between a stray anxious thought about something, sort of the waking equivalent of a bad dream, where you just think, I don't know, I think everybody's against me. You can't tell the difference between that and a legitimate feeling that, you know what, everyone's against you and you better run. So saying you have to trust your gut is sort of advice that you should trust something that's completely going in and out of focus right now. So you need something deeper than that, something more reliable than that. And I would say those are principles. Those are principles and tools that help you get out of, fearful, resentful thinking. That's what I use my daily practice for. You hear me talk about that all the time. It's a set of techniques. I teach it for free. There's always a link down below where you can sign up for that. It takes about an hour to learn. But I did learn to trust my gut when I had a lot less fear and a lot less resentment kind of cluttering up my mind. And what was left there was that inner voice going, telling me this is trustworthy, this is not. Third thing that I was so surprised really got in the way of my emotional availability was alcohol. Like, what's the first thing we do when we want to feel comfortable in an uncomfortable situation? Have a drink. But actually, alcohol throws you off. It sort of cuts off an awareness and an access to you where it looks like you're open and warm and connecting, but it's something else. It's just something else. It's sort of it's a lack of inhibition. So it's not the same as closeness. And so I'm not saying you should never drink, but if attachment wounds tend to get the better of you when you're dating or trying to form a relationship or trying to grow in your emotional availability so that you can actually be really close to someone who loves you, I'd say, I don't know, maybe alcohol doesn't belong in the mix. All right, a fourth thing that complicated my emotional availability: dating people I knew weren't right for me, or even hanging out with people who either I was interested in and they weren't interested in me, or vice versa. They were interested and I wasn't. And even though one person always goes, I just want to make sure you know that we're just friends, it doesn't matter. Hanging around like that, it's like a way where you take all your emotional availability and you spend it. You spend it on something that's never going to pay you back. It's like a slot machine that always takes the money and never gives anything back. And then you don't have the money anymore. And so the metaphor here for the money is your availability, your capacity to love and be present. You can actually be single and develop your emotional availability and be ready when you do meet somebody you really like, and get to know them and see if you think they would be a good person to grow closer to. Then your emotional availability can be revealed, and it won't be all just like drained and trod on and ripped, from having gone through a whole bunch of rejection and a whole bunch of, just hanging out with somebody. Number 5, this hurt my emotional availability: expecting key people in my life, like partners or friends or my boss, to unconditionally love me in the way that my parents were supposed to. That was always a very confusing thing for me before I healed. I'd just be like, I feel like this isn't fair. I feel like they owe it to me to treat me equally to everybody. Well, your boss doesn't. And your partner is not your parent. And I think that's a very important distinction. That's one way you can really kind of kill the spark in a relationship, is to fall into a parent-child relationship with them. With friends too, that they aren't like parents. And a lot of times I get letters from traumatized people when they're hurting because of the way friends have treated them. And what I hear is that somebody is actually not a very good friend, or they don't even like the friend, but there's some sort of deep-rooted idea that you're supposed to really stay with that friend, or that you have no choice and you've just got to wring it out of them, that unconditional love that you deserve. And I just see people with trauma do this over and over again, parentifying their boss or friend or partner, or familyifying a group of people. And there are very few groups of friends or groups of coworkers that are that stable that they remain family, even when some people become abusive, even when some people, a job, people get laid off. It's not really a family. And so that's a boundary that you can have, to have coworkers you really like and hang out with, and friends you really love and hang out with, or a boss you respect, but you don't make into your father or mother. These boundaries help you stay in reality. And when you're in reality, your emotional availability to the people you do choose to be very close to opens up. It's not all full of landmines of why don't you unconditionally love me? Why are you so unfair? Why have you made me the scapegoat? By the way, if you get scapegoated at work, because that can happen, I would get out of there. I think it's an irredeemable situation. If I changed anything about my past career, it would be to be much quicker to leave situations I didn't like, rather than trying to make people understand me and be fair, and all that resentment and all that sadness and all that feeling like life was passing me by while they stayed in that situation. Okay, another thing that hurt my emotional availability: not speaking up. I got so used to suppressing things that I couldn't really open up anymore. So I'm just remembering something during lockdown. My son graduated from high school in the, a year into lockdown, 13 months into lockdown. And it was going to be another year before that school district ever opened. Where we lived, it was 2 years of closed schools. It was really, really, really hard on the kids, and a very sad situation. So there was this lame graduation on this giant football field where nobody talked to each other and they were spaced out. And afterwards, my husband and I took my son to the fanciest bakery near us and let him pick out a cake. And that was going to be the plan all day. We can't hang out with anybody else. We'll just get a cake, a nice cake, whatever one he likes, and we'll go home and we'll have dinner and we'll have cake and we'll celebrate his high school graduation. I have to admit, I still feel really sad about this, that it was just so disappointing for him. But we go into this bakery and they have this sign on the window that says you could have 5 people at a time. And we looked inside and perhaps we didn't see somebody there, but the 3 of us came inside, and the 3 of us being there made 6 customers at the same time, but we weren't quite aware of it. And honestly, 5, 6, whatever. And this woman all of a sudden just starts screaming at us. And the last one to come in was my son. He's just turned 18, and it's the day of his high school graduation. And he comes in and she just starts screaming at him, "Get out, get out, get out. Are you trying to kill me? Are you trying to," just screaming at him. And I didn't say anything. And I said, I'll go out. And he goes, "No, don't go out." And he came in, and here's how my son handled it. He goes, "Oh, I'm sure you're right." She goes, "You obviously hate people. You want to kill everyone. You just come in here. You have no respect for rules." And it wasn't anything like that. It's just like nobody really noticed. And but once the yelling had begun, he just wasn't going to back down. And he was like trying to stop me from leaving, because I was the one like, "Oh, I just hate conflict. I don't want to be yelled at." But it was really dumb. If it really bothered, I don't know. Some of you out there, you can yell at me if you want, but it was my poor son's high school graduation, and she was like right in his face. And he said, and she just kept saying that he was awful. He was a worthless person. He didn't care about anybody. And he said, "I'm sure you're right. I'm sure you're right. I'm sure you're right." And then she just started talking to herself, and then she stormed out of the whole thing. She bought whatever she was buying, and she stormed out just like ranting the whole way. And I didn't say anything. My son was fine because he spoke up for himself, and he said, "Oh boy, she was just awful." And the store was really sorry. They didn't want to have a big scene about it or anything. And they honestly, I don't know, these things happen. There's no need to start screaming. So we got this cake, and I couldn't even eat it. Nobody wanted the cake. It's just a big sad cake. It just felt really sad and bad. And I wish I had said something to her. And I wish I had thought about, I hadn't really thought in advance about what to say, but I kind of wanted to say something like, "How dare you? It's his high school graduation. This is all he gets. Like, what's the matter with you?" And I held it in. And because I held it in, and because, I think I didn't want to ruin his day for him, but you know what ruined the day is like that I just ended up like ruminating and shut down and not eating cake all day. I just couldn't be in the moment. I couldn't enjoy it. So that was a little bit of a lesson to me about sometimes, even though there's a risk that you're going to be over the top or it's going to be too much, that standing up for yourself or for your loved ones, that sometimes that's the best way forward to keep your heart alive. So that happened. I always wonder what happened. I swear this woman was like ranting to herself all the way down the street. And I remember thinking like, she must be so unhappy. Like the whole world is just full of situations that you can't control around this whole thing, around anything, let alone, 2021, spring of 2021. All right, here's one. This interfered with my emotional availability. Talking about negative things. Oh, I'm doing it right now. Talking about negative things though, like, "Can you believe the traffic?" Or, the world today, it's all going to hell in a handbasket. The lady in the bakery, everything in the past. I think the hard things do require care when we communicate about them so that we can stay close to our purpose in why we're talking about it. Because otherwise, it can be a little bit like a pile of logs that start tumbling down on you. It can be like a pile of logs that catch fire. Once you start talking about something where there's a little, like a thread of resentment in there, boom, it can just ignite into a great big storm of resentment. And when I get resentful, same thing as the bakery, I just kind of like not there. I'm not there anymore. I'm really like in my head about it. All right, hanging out with friends that I don't like or respect. I used to do that. I used to just need anybody. I just wanted companionship, but they weren't people I really liked and respected. And so I ended up with this like big membrane around me that I was never really listening. I was never really sharing myself. And therefore I wasn't really emotionally available. And this kept me from learning things, from trying things, from connecting with people, until I finally allowed myself to be alone for a while and not, just actually be with people I felt like being with. Okay, here's another barrier: resentment. I was not only pushing people away when I was so resentful all the time. I'm still resentful a little bit of the time now, but when it was just like the dominant emotion of my life, I pushed people away. It kept me from being present with them. I couldn't really have empathy for anyone, or not for the right people. I couldn't have feeling for people who were right in front of me. It was always abstract about people in a country where they were struggling, but not for the people right in front of me. So resentment had to go. And that's another thing that I've been able to have lifted off of me in large measure because of the daily practice techniques I use. All right, another one. I couldn't be vulnerable. I couldn't be vulnerable because my resentment left me convinced that people were against me. And that belief is such a contrary to being emotionally available. I always felt guarded. I felt like I had to act nice and hide how awkward I was feeling so that I could never just relax. And I was tense. And to be honest, I was critical in my mind toward other people, even if I didn't say anything. It made me avoidant. I was literally avoidant. Maybe you can relate to that. People can feel that you are, just trying to hold yourself apart from them, even no matter how you're standing or what smile is on your face, they can feel it. And it can't really be hidden because your nervous system is sort of giving it off. And it makes it very hard to connect. Okay, now here are some surprising things that help me do the opposite, that help me heal faster and become more emotionally open to other people. The first thing to heal, it wasn't my ability to connect. It was getting free of resentment. That was the first thing. I think that was the root cause, as I was so angry. And I used to use it for boundaries. I remember when my friend was like, I think you have a lot of resentment. I think it's really pushing people away. I think you might want to lose some of that. I was really afraid that if I didn't have resentment, everybody would just walk all over me. So I was confusing resentment and anger at people for having boundaries. When you have no boundaries, what have you got? You've got lashing out at them if you don't like something. It's not a very good system, but it's really, really normal for traumatized people to have these sort of very rudimentary tools for navigating life. Boundaries are where you have a clear idea of I'm okay with this, I'm not okay with this. If this thing starts happening, I'm going to have to go. This isn't my thing. That's what a boundary is. So if you know that you're free to leave, if you know that you have that power, you're freer to go into the place in the first place. If it's someone's house or something, you're like, I don't know, this could be weird. But if you know that you can leave, you can go in. So that's how closeness works. That's why boundaries allow you actually to get closer to other people. The second thing, I have to give this credit, even though it's counterintuitive, very surprising. It's exercise. Just moving my body every day actually makes everything better. And it does something where it helps me be kind of more in touch with myself. I feel better physically, but also I'm just sort of here. I'm here. I'm not lost in my head. I tend to be a very imaginative person, I guess you would say, often thought. So exercise kind of keeps me here, and I can pay attention and I can notice what are you feeling while you're telling me this story? What is the hidden meaning in what you're saying? I start to become very perceptive just because I'm moving my body, regularly during the day. All right, another thing, on media, staying PG-13 on media, something that really shuts me down, even though I love Game of Thrones or, shows, they're totally violent and rapey and everything. I love the show. But actually, when I watch all that stuff, I shut down. And sometimes that's a price I'm willing to pay. The next morning I'm going to get up, I'm going to write, I'm going to meditate. I'll probably be sort of fully back there. But I think it always takes a little something out of me when I watch, graphic sex and violence. And, I hate to admit it because I really enjoy TV, and there's so little of it that's PG-13. Can I just say something? A majority of shows, to prove me wrong, have stripper bar scenes in them. Am I right? There's always a stripper bar scene in things. They started in The Sopranos. I guess they figured out as backgrounds go, it would engage viewers or something. But it's always there. And so it's, we don't really drink at my house. But if we did, we'd have a drinking game of every time a stripper bar appears, you take a drink, right? They're just in everything, and the most unlikely things, they're always just thrown in there. So watch, now that I've told you about this, you're going to notice it. You could comment in the comments if you see the same thing. But actually, when I see a scene in a stripper bar, it actually brings me down. I feel sad. I feel sad about it. And yeah, I feel weird and uncomfortable and left out and sad. And so it's just not that great. It's not in a PG-13 thing. And I actually don't think there's that many stripper bars that everybody goes to them all the time, every time they have a chat. All right. So there was a part of me that always cringed and tightened up around graphic stuff. And this doesn't just include like, sex and violence, but like political stuff, emergency room dramas. Yes, murder scenes, of course. But when we watch that stuff, I'm just so aware, and I know you are too. Like after a while, you're looking at all this political stuff or looking at X and it's good. You can get some news, but you just start to go, oh my gosh, like I'm being just like fed all this stuff that's designed to make me angry. And what is that really like information? Is that really good for me? And there is information that would very rightly make us angry out there. But, I'm sure you've noticed it's a form of like emotional porn, really, just there to get you all angry. Now, I know why anger feels so good, why so many of us succumb so easily into anger porn, and it's, or outrage porn, as people call it, as it feels better than depression. When you're feeling a little bit down and, drained of energy, getting all angry about something, it's like, whoo, a burst of energy. It feels really like something. It feels like life. Whereas being all down and empty feels like you're dying, then it's like anger. Yeah, I want to do something. But we're grooming ourselves when we do that to go numb in the face of real hardship, as if the world where people hurt isn't real and it's all just entertainment. And when I was able to spend a lot less time on this and kind of reject anything that was there just to make me angry, like as soon as I could tell that's what it is, I'm just like, I don't need this. The information's not going to be that good. This boosted my emotional availability. All right, another thing that helped me be more available, doing things alone. Yeah, especially traveling and hiking and things where my senses could be attentive to my environment. Not so much chit chat, right? When you travel with somebody or, take a day trip, it's a lot of talking. So when I go somewhere alone, I end up meeting locals. I have chit chat with people who are standing in line with me, and it makes me feel free and confident. And that's a nice feeling. That's emotional availability, right? So by the way, I'm getting at, this is another way we play small, right? Is to have our emotional availability just like guarded and shut down all the time. This is how we stop playing small. So here's another thing. Some of these things are surprising because it's like the opposite of what I would have thought. What helped me get emotionally available was not dating, and instead using time to work hard on clearing up life problems and getting clear on what kind of person belonged in my life. And eventually, when I met my now husband, I was really emotionally available. There just wasn't a whole bunch of like inner conflicts or past people or anything. I was just like really clear. I was just living my life. I had improved things to where I felt good about it. I had my kids, I had my house. I wanted peace. I wanted somebody who had their life together. And I was very clear so that I could feel, I was very sensitive at last to the difference between somebody whose life is chaos and somebody whose life is strong. And I wanted strong, and I could detect it, and I was right. All right, here's another thing that helped me become more emotionally available. And it was learning that I could let go of trying to like extract help and energy and support and validation from people around me. I always felt a deficit in my sad days. I needed it. I just thought if people would give it to me, I would be okay. And so when this shift happened in me where I understood, like, I'm not going to be able to like wring it out of people, like support might appear. There were times when it felt like it never would. And that is exactly when I let go. I was like, fine, I'm still not going to like fight about it with people or badger them. I'd be like, why haven't you been more supportive? I've been going through such a hard time. I felt that way. There were people who let me down when I needed people the most. But I ended up just thinking, you know what? I just don't want anybody hanging out with me or helping me because they were guilted into it. I want to just see what can naturally happen if I kind of change my attitude on that. So what changed is I would just sort of hang out with people socially and not try to get anything from them. I could listen to them. I noticed things about them, for better and worse, sometimes. And being attentive showed me what was awesome about each person. But sometimes what I didn't like about them showed up too. My red flag detector would switch on and go, now that you're paying attention, maybe not so much this person. And then the really big thing that changed for me and helped me become more emotionally available and open to my life was talking less about my trauma and instead writing. And that ended up, it was February 1994 when I learned this writing technique that helped me to very rapidly change and evolve and get out of the depression and stuckness and sort of mental chaos I was in. I had PTSD. I had a lot of bad things happen as an adult, and it had sort of like brought up a lot of old trauma from childhood. I was a wreck. And I just so happened to learn this technique where I could get my anxious, angry thoughts about it and feelings onto paper and then ask for them to be removed. It was sort of like a prayer. And then it was suggested to me that I learn meditation and follow that up with a restful meditation. And it worked so well that my whole life changed. I wrote this whole book that opens up the whole first chapter, Re-regulated. It's how it happened. It begins with the story of how that happened and how I changed afterwards and then everything I learned. So that's my whole life's work now as I teach other people how to have that happen for them, to become present for their lives, to have a lot of that anxious, angry stuff fall away, to be more yourself. If you want to give it a try, I still teach it for free. And if you take this course, you'll get emails from me inviting you to free calls. I do Zoom calls twice a month. My team does them on every other week. So every week we have a big public call where you can use these techniques together and we take questions. If you want to talk to me, I'll be there. You can ask me a question. And it all begins when you sign up for this free course. And you can do that right there. And I will see you very soon.